this kind of argument that people should pay more just because, don't you realise how high my costs are? People don't care.
I'm Dani Valent, and this is Dirty Linen, the podcast that takes the issues the hospitality industry finds hard to air in public and shakes them all about. This week on Dirty Linen, we're talking about hospitality business models. What works, what doesn't, what's harder than it used to be, and how can COVID be an opportunity to do things differently for the better? Ken Burgin is a hospitality consultant who reckons he's stopped hundreds of hospo wannabes from sacrificing their own homes and futures for a starry-eyed food dream. He's a realist and a numbers guy who loves helping people see the beauty and the necessity of a nice spreadsheet. He sees the pandemic as an opportunity to reset and refocus. Ken, it's fantastic to have you here to share your expertise. Start by telling us a bit about yourself and why you're the right person to talk to us about hospitality business management.
Hey, Dani, great to join you today. There's lots of people with lots of good ideas, I guess, at this time. Back in the 90s, had a restaurant and cafe in Sydney for 10 years and had the sort of dream of having my own business from a completely different background, really enjoyed that. And then sold the business back in the late 90s and then went into the consulting side and advisory side of restaurants and cafes and enjoyed that and built up a business called Profitable Hospitality, which most of our services were online. And I guess through that and all through a lot of training I used to run, just got to meet hundreds and hundreds, maybe, I don't know if it was thousands of business operators who were either running businesses or I ran some classes, a lot of classes for people who wanted to start as well. So I keep those conversations going now. I joined a company called Silver Chef about 4 years ago when they bought my business and still my main focus is, business education for our customers and the industry. And last 6 months, because it started when the fires hit in Christmas time, it's like nothing we've ever seen before, is it? So all the advice we thought was good advice before, we're having to relook at it and think about it again.
Yeah, well, I suppose no one really reckons hospitality was in a brilliant spot before the summer. You're in a good position to do a bit of an overview of the hospitality industry. So can you do that? Like talk about where it was and what's happened?
Yeah, well, one of the things that is always a burden for people is very high rents. And in Australia, for various reasons, retail rents are very high, Main Street rents or shopping centre rents. So is kind of like a very heavy fixed cost that has to be borne by a business, whether it's a quiet week or a busy week. So that's the start of the burden. And then, there's no barriers of entry. If you've got a new strip of shops open up under a block of flats, which every block of flats in the street seems to have new shops underneath it, there's more competitors arising. So anyone can open a place pretty simply. It doesn't mean they're going to succeed, but while they're there and doing discount coffees and things like that, they're eating away at everyone else's business. So, endless competition, high fixed costs. And I have mixed feelings about saying high wage costs in Australia because on the one hand, $20, $25, $30 an hour on weekends or something is high, but these are some of the lowest paid people in the country. So, we've got to sort of solve that problem. Yeah, we've got to solve that problem.
Well, we'll dig into industrial reform in a later episode, but definitely wage costs are, of course, a big part of the way restaurants need to try to balance the books. What about the way that restaurants tend to operate? What kinds of things have you noticed through your journey?
Yeah, well, one of the things that the smart operators are grabbing hold of very quickly at the minute in this, difficult COVID-19 time is using technology much more cleverly and much more carefully to whether it's managing purchases or managing their roster, letting people order online, handling the bookings, keeping track of all the numbers. And the numbers are something that people in hospitality have traditionally been pretty weak with. Whether it's just, costing the recipe that we're going to be using of the seafood pasta and, working out how much each of those prawns cost, or looking at, our projections ahead for our labour costs over the next few weeks. A lot of business has been what I call rear vision management, where you're looking at the rear vision mirror and seeing what happened last week or the week before, and oh dear, that wasn't very good, was it? But, we've actually got technology and simple ways to look ahead now and do, more projections and more planning. So, yeah, we've got kind of tools at our fingertips at very low cost that we didn't have 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's exciting, really, if we want to really kind of manage our business much more carefully.
I guess so many hospitality businesses are built on passion, someone's great idea or someone's desire to have a restaurant, all those people that are told, oh, you should open a restaurant, this is delicious. The hospitality business owners are not always the most sort of, I guess, steely minded when it comes to business, are they?
Yeah, that's right. And look, I love, someone does amazing baking, fantastic. But, the difference between a tray of pastries for my friends coming around, oh, they're a bit late, and those ones in the corner, they're a bit burnt. No, it's all right, it's fantastic. Whereas people forget that actually it's manufacturing you're going into. And manufacturing means absolute rock-solid reliability. I want the same chocolate croissant when I buy it today or when I buy it next week. I want, that reliability. And manufacturing means, expensive equipment. It means, strict processes. There's a lot. I think it's important to think about. It's not, in a way, it is a little factory, and that is the disciplines associated with that. And, we can't have tolerance for fault or for kind of weakness or lateness or those sort of things. That doesn't work.
And I suppose the pandemic has highlighted the fact that there's no tolerance for being disorganised at the back end of a business as well.
Yeah, one of the things that's really highlighted a weakness for a lot of people is around running their books and running their numbers, keeping track of those, because suddenly we had an unprecedented amount of financial support come in, whether for JobKeeper or, state governments were giving away $10,000 grants for almost no reason. And, tax refunds, all sorts of things like that. But you had to have your books updated. You had to be able to prove, say, your takings were down 30% or 70% or something like that. And you had to be able to verify that. And a surprising number of people just couldn't keep up with that, or they were late with it. So, it's not about lecturing people that, you should know your weekly wage costs and your food costs. Well, you should. But if you've got a nice, well-organised set of books, you could just press the button and pull off a profit and loss to show that your sales were down, get that straight into the tax department, and your JobKeeper payments came through first while other people were still struggling. So, yeah, a good set of numbers and kind of appreciation of the importance of that is really, I think, more and more people are understanding that.
So what kinds of things do you suggest to people that they can do to improve the way their businesses are run?
So I think one of the things, let's say just around the numbers and things like that, is get some helpers. Don't pretend that you're able to do all these things. And people, when they think of cost cutting, and that's often a reflex when suddenly there's a downturn. Well, we've got to cut costs. Well, of course you've got to look at costs carefully, but cut fat, don't cut muscle. And muscle might be the fact that there's someone who's offsite who looks after your bookwork and reconciles it all and pays all the bills for you and all those sorts of things, and that means it's all up to date. Don't by any means cut that person out and say, oh, we can do that. A lot of businesses actually say they can do it, and they do it all themselves, and it falls hopelessly behind. So that's one of the things, keeping track of the numbers. And then I'm a big fan of having good online rostering, because your wage costs are usually your largest single cost. certainly the one that people complain about. And if you have good rostering, all your staff can access their roster very quickly. You can see right up to, the end of lunchtime today what our wages were, and make adjustments if our sales are a bit down, that sort of thing. So just, putting those things, in place, I think is really important.
Oh, I was just going to say the question of, cutting fat, not muscle. I was like, where's the fat? Because I can sort of hear in the back of my mind a lot of business owners saying, I've got no fat. I've got nowhere to cut.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Well, I think they kind of interpret fat. See, there might be, certain times of the week you think, God, we're a bit overstaffed this week, aren't we? Gosh, do we really need a cleaner to come in and do the cleaning in the morning? Can't the staff do that at the end of the night? Can't they clean the toilets? You can see where this is going. And, things around hygiene practices easily kind of they're shortchanged. We might be going for, cheaper cuts of meat or certain things like that, or go for suppliers who are offering much better prices or, slightly better prices, but they don't have the reliability about delivery and those sorts of things. So
sure, there's trade-offs.
Yeah.
Well, I guess each business has to work out for itself where the fat is, but I mean, a lot of businesses just don't have much. But I hear what you're saying. It's like the experts that you've got in to help your business run better. That is not the place to. Well, they're not the people that you want to abandon. They're the people that you want sort of side by side with you in the trenches, working out how to do things better.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I suppose a lot of people have talked about the pandemic as an opportunity to reset, to do things differently. We never have time to think. We never have time to reset, to recharge. And this is the opportunity. What I'm seeing as people reopen is that a lot of people are just diving back into the way things were. It is really hard to force change in this industry. One of the things that people always talk about is that they need to raise prices. Is it that simple, or why isn't it that simple?
Yeah, I guess I get a bit impatient about that sort of thing. Look, pricing there's so many interesting aspects to pricing. I use Apple computers. Why do I pay twice as much for a computer if I got a PC? Is that, they've sort of woven this kind of mystique around, Apple products that we pay more. I think they're good too, but it's definitely, there's an irrational element. And the more you can have something irrational and emotional around going to your place and eating your food and having your incredible pastries or whatever, you will pay more within reason. But as soon as you take away the magic, and I just look at what's on the plate, it's like, who says it's worth that? And this is where, when I hear these arguments, people are just forgetting that there's a sort of magical element around pricing, but there's also an economics 101 argument that, when you raise the price of any product, people oftentimes the consumption goes down. Well, the minute strawberries are $8.90 in my local supermarket now. I love strawberries on my breakfast virtually every morning, but I'm not buying them. Okay, so
move on to apples.
Yeah, we kind of forget that the iron laws of economics apply to our business as well. If and the more we make our product just a standard plain, pasta carbonara the same as everyone else does, people will start to look at prices. I mean, you can nudge prices up 20 cents more on a coffee, those sorts of things. But it's this kind of argument that people should pay more just because don't they realise how good quality? Don't you realise how high my costs are? People don't care, and they really don't. They don't want to hear hard luck stories from restaurateurs.
But I mean, hopefully they don't also want their restaurant to not be able to make any money. Therefore, it goes out of business. It's a tricky one. And I mean, also restaurants are a place to create the magic and the mystique. So is that an answer that, like, sure, put your price of a dish up $2, but you need to have a little bit of extra magic to account for that price rise?
Yeah, and again, create the magic that people actually want, not the magic that you think they want. Like, I'm of a generation where I go into most places and I think this is so loud. This is really uncomfortable. And I look around and most people are, baby boomers like me, just like, who chose this music? Now, I won't get onto that, that thing that I like to beef about. But, just be really conscious about all the elements that go together to create a magical, wonderful experience that you want to go back many times over. We should be in the business of creating customers who never leave us alone. They keep coming back, and yeah.
Well, what are some of the things that people can do? How do you create those rusted on customers that just cannot get enough?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is, the flavours and, the actual thing that's in the takeaway box or on the plate when we sit down or in the cup. But I think there's a lot around comfort, and by that I don't mean armchairs. Cafe, my favourite local one is just we're on stools, and I don't even like stools, but but there's recognition, and they don't know my name, but they always nod, and they kind of usually remember what my coffee is and things like that. So there's lots of small elements like that. There's always something that keep little subtle differences. And there's things what I call quality signals. Like they always have beautiful fresh flowers. It's like a $20 bunch of flowers, not an $8 bunch of flowers. Just little touches. And the uniforms never look like they've been washed, 1,000 times. They always looking kind of fresh, and people are staff are groomed, and they still wear their own clothes. But there's obviously a standard they have to conform to. And there's just multiple little quality signals. The plates are kind of quirky, and I did do what restaurant people like to do, turn the plate over one time to have a look at the brand. And it's just another brand from China, But again, all these little elements together create something that's special and different.
I suppose there are other ways that owners can take the pressure off themselves a little bit in terms of thinking they need to raise prices. So one of those is around booking policies. No-shows are obviously crippling for restaurants, especially now when numbers are restricted. So what sort of advice would you have for people around booking policies?
Yeah, look, this is the old, I think Obama said it, probably others too, don't waste a crisis. And this is time to really toughen up on rules about booking, especially for key times, like, whether it's a weekend evening or Sunday brunches or whatever, but time for deposits and cancellation fees, because all that can be done through apps now, the booking app. So when we book for 6 people for Sunday brunch at 11 o'clock, we have to book using the app, and we have to pay a deposit of $25 per person, and it's not refundable, or whatever your rules might be. But, explain these things and, say it with a smile, but, tough love, because, in restaurants, we've been sort of telling people, no, you can't, with a smile, in lots of different ways for a long time. This is just something we've been a bit neglectful around. I think I get a bit impatient sometimes. So, it can be devastating if you can only see 10 and half of them don't turn up. But I think, boy, if you can only see 10, I would be wanting full payment for those people, while that situation arises. So we've got a chance to reset some of the rules, I think.
Right. So you think people should take that chance and be firm, but then it's about how you deliver the message as well.
Yeah, firm and friendly. Yeah, absolutely friendly. Yeah, for sure.
I know you're big on diverse income streams, and that's something I suppose a lot of businesses have tried, at least with takeaway during this period. Can you talk a bit more about your views on that and what kinds of things you think restaurants could give a go?
Yeah, well, there's the takeout and the delivery suddenly sprung into life, and that was hard for a lot of places because the places weren't engineered and set up for that. And if they did it themselves, they realised, boy, those poor old Uber drivers, what a tough life they have. Or you got Uber or delivery to do it, and you gave them 35%, which is just doesn't work. But there's meal packs, there's take-home, meals for later. There's family packs. People are inventing lots of different things. And there's a little bit of people waiting for, oh my God, I can't wait to get back to normal when we can get rid of all that stuff. But I actually feel that those extra food products, if you can just kind of engineer them the right way and get your pricing right and, then get the sales of those sort of things happening with maybe impulse sales or just suggestive selling on your menu as well, that can be another good source of income. It may only be 10, 15, 20%, but that's diversification, because we were so dependent on one product only and suddenly we were told to close and we had nothing. So, yeah, there's that. There's, whether it's you've got a room that can be rented out for parties, functions. Something that I think restaurants could do a lot that aren't open in the day is have your room available for meetings and functions. But don't forget, people want to, if you've got, say, going to have your place available for a sales meeting or just a standard boring business event of something like that, they want it reconfigured and they want, coffee on arrival and continual coffee and all those things that people get at 4 and 5 star hotels, and they make a fortune out of this sort of plain vanilla kind of meeting spaces. But boy, restaurants have got so much, so many square meters available that they could be selling in the same way if they just can re-engineer it a little bit.
You'd have to say a lot of that custom would be up for grabs at the moment as well, with events being so disrupted and also with so many companies having people working from home. Now we are able to gather in some numbers. So I think there would be a lot of that trade that restaurants could target.
Yeah, and much more interesting to sit around in an interesting restaurant than in a plain, beige hotel room with white tablecloths. I think there's opportunities there.
I mean, something a lot of restaurants have been doing is helping out their producers and selling some of that produce direct to consumers. And I think that's something that restaurants could do a bit more of as well, is maintaining those connections.
Yeah, I think that can be a nice. Just need to watch the costing of all those sorts of things, because people certainly responded to having produce boxes or just being able to buy sugar or, eggs and things like that. But the margins on those things is pretty tiny. So we just got to weigh up. But if, say, you're buying extra eggs and you were, once they'd been on the shelves for 2 days, then they went into the kitchen to be used for production. That's a nice way to, kind of expand. But I don't think just becoming a little grocery, having a few grocery shelves is going to make too much money.
Do you think that there's, you mentioned at the start of our chat, that every new apartment development has a cafe down below. Do you think the bar is too low for people who want to start a restaurant or cafe? And do you think, the industry would be better if it was a bit harder to open something up?
There's hardly any bar. Well, you've got to have a grease trap, and you've got to have exhaust if you're going to be cooking and frying. But oftentimes that's all been set up in a lot of those developments. But, our free enterprise system, it's basically, up for grabs, all these spaces. It's a blight on a lot of streets, isn't it, to see empty shops or, failed shops. And, boy, there's a lot more now. So, yeah, I don't see a way that that's going to be changed, except more people not making impulsive emotional decisions to open a cafe when we don't need another one.
Do you reckon that when you've been, consulting to people, that you've headed off a lot of people from opening a soon-to-fail cafe?
Yeah, look, the way for a long time I used to run a day course for people starting a cafe and restaurant, and we talk all about trends and customers and employment, and I always used to leave the numbers till the last, because then I would just go through and explain the idea of break-even point, which is, the idea that you've got your fixed costs like rent, and they're the main leasing costs, and then you've got to pay for those fixed costs with the profit on every plate you make, a plate of pasta or something, and only when you've paid all your fixed costs, then you can start to make a profit. Anyway, I just gently put the numbers together, and that's when the penny would drop. And people were often in quite a bit of shock to think that, wow, is that really? I mean, I'm really sick of my IT job, or boy, I wish I want to get away from teaching, but really take, a cut to, halve my wages and double my workload or something. So,
yeah, but what about my food dream?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. What about helping people and, being friendly to everyone, that sort of thing? It's, numbers, a good set of numbers makes a difference.
Definitely, and being rigorous about those numbers at every step along the way. A lot of it is hospitality, and I think that people in hospitality want to serve people and please people, and they want to be able to say yes to most requests. But I feel like that's meant that a lot of businesses have just tried to be everything to everybody and sort of lost focus on their core and what they were trying to do in the first place. Do you think that that's an opportunity to reset around the pandemic as well? To just stop doing so much.
It is a tricky one, because you see these people say, we're in the business of saying yes, or, the answer is yes, whatever. In fact, they often have, the ones that are successful, it's a bit of a PR thing, the way they say that, because they actually have quite kind of tight guidelines about what's possible, and within that they can say yes. But, like we were talking about with cancellations before, or just even variations on the plate, like, can I have mine with this or with that? The whole thing of dietaries at the minute is a bit of a nightmare for a lot of operators, because it's not like people are allergic to things. They just prefer to have something different, and, it just slows up production in the kitchen. So we've got to, just kind of go back to being a little bit stricter, like we were saying before, strict with a smile, and, be a lot tighter around it.
Were you really saying that you can say no to somebody's keto preferences on a menu? Is that really okay in 2020?
Look, if you find that in your area keto's big, have a whole keto section. This is what people are finding, say, with vegan options. They do a whole vegan section and it goes nuts. That is wonderful. So, this is not about being, cranky and old-fashioned, but, go crazy on the keto or explain what it is, but don't let if people want you to kind of change everything, that's what you do at home. You don't do it when you go out. So, keep a close eye on what's popular in your area. Like one thing, I know a perennial thing has been about, sugar-free desserts. And I'm sorry, they just don't sell. They just don't sell, So we've tried that for years.
So you don't need to be all things to all people.
No, but be a lot. But and again, just be constantly listening and testing, and go and see what other people are doing well, and keep your eyes wide open. Yeah, constantly researching, and smoke and mirrors.
That little bit of magic and that little bit of mistake, and perhaps if you get it right, you can charge a couple of extra bucks for it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I love people. I love it when people are the most expensive place in the street, they're always full. I don't mean because they're, $100 a head place, but just, their coffee's 50 cents more and their pastries, 80 cents more, and it's a $12 sandwich, it's not a $9 sandwich. I love that.
So they're obviously able to communicate the value.
Yeah.
Or the value is just there. It's obvious to their customers. Okay, well, Ken, let's finish with a little bit of positivity and let's look at the opportunities that have come out of the pandemic. If a business was looking to reset, to forge on, to do better than they've ever done before, what kinds of things would you advise them to do and to look at now?
So one thing we talked before about rent. So now's the chance to have a really tough decision either with your current landlord or look at somewhere else, because there are going to be landlords who are, really needing to do deals, really do. And, you've got a lot more room to move if you got your rent down. Rents, if that's your rent's like 10, 12, 14% of your sales, that's crazy. That's just too expensive. But if you can get your rent way, way down, then you've got more freedom to, keep your costs maybe, your menu prices down a little more and things like that. So one opportunity is, much harder negotiation around occupation costs. And I'm actually not in favour of cutting wages, but I am in favour of keeping your wage costs down, because you're watching that much more closely and aligning the labour to when you're busy. So every time it's busy, we've got enough staff, and there's no one looking around thinking, where's my waiter? Why is this table still dirty?
That's not the magic and mystique either.
No. And for purchasing, your food now, beverages have been pretty well organised, with, say, wine and other beverages online, but you've got some terrific suppliers now, and they've all pretty much gone online. So you can go online, you can find the best prices, you can do deals, you can actually really calibrate that stuff, and then you can feed it into your own kind of recipe costing systems and things like that. So you can really watch all these costs so tightly, and if people are prepared to start to watch the numbers and not say that's too hard and that makes my head hurt. Watching those numbers, you've got the systems, you've got your bookkeeping and everything like that you can be just keeping a really tight eye on thing. And then you've got fantastic, through social media, fantastic promotional opportunities as well to be, pumping up Monday night if that's quiet, or promoting, a new function menu, or the daytime, meeting space that you're going to set up in your restaurant or something like that. So, a lot more you've got opportunities to really get into the details a lot more easily and kind of leverage them.
And so what's the mindset? Is it a scary time or is it an exciting time?
Let's not underestimate how difficult it is emotionally for people. This is, there's a huge amount of stress, but it's a time for incredible resilience, and sadly there's a lot of people who haven't had that strength for all sorts of reasons, and they're not going to make it through. But for people who can really, hopefully they're not too indebted, they've got, I'm not saying they've got lots of money in the bank, but they're not, too burdened by debt. There's terrific opportunities there, but the industry is going to be smaller and people are going to be poorer. And we've got to be ready to offer, terrific value. But Aussies love to go out. They want to eat out. They want, they're just going to trade down.
Yeah, well, I think there's going to be a lot of restaurants and cafes that will be ready to meet people where they are and to make the most of it in their own businesses. Thank you so much, Ken, for sharing all your advice and tips born of your own experiences. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Enjoyed it very much. Thanks, Dani. Cheers.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.